Now, this is a really interesting question I just got asked, and that is this. When it comes to AI music getting so popular, what happens if the music goes viral? This AI artist, what happens with performances and other aspects of that artist's entire career, if I would call it that? And I'm gonna be honest right away in this video. Two things I'll say. One, I think this is inevitable, honestly. So this question isn't as far-fetched as it may sound. I feel like there's a close to 100% chance that this is something that might happen, honestly. So this is not like a random thing to just bring up out of nowhere. But two, this is going to be a very fireside chat style video. Obviously, I'm going to be talking a lot from experience of what I know when it comes to music distribution, which I've done a bajillion videos about on this channel. But then also, I've done a lot of videos about AI music, especially recently. So it's kind of like a cool intersection given the logistical, almost unexplored territory of AI combined with distribution. So here's something I want to say right in the beginning. And I think this is kind of cool about this. This kind of shows what could be the pitfalls or downsides of AI when people talk about AI taking over people's jobs. Now, of course, there's a lot of industries that AI, I think, will take over and already is. And music is one of the very interesting ones because when you think about music, you really have, and I'm oversimplifying this, I think two main aspects of music where people like them for different reasons, kind of same thing, but kind of different. One is the actual aspect of making music and listening to it on a platform. So for example, let's say, a musician works on an album, they release it on Spotify and you listen to it. That's one aspect. But the second thing is music performances. And as most people know, streams and downloads, although downloads are kind of like obsolete now. So let's say streams don't pay that much. We all know this, right? There's a bunch of memes about this. And like Spotify is constantly under fire for not paying musicians well. It's a bit of a mess. So for a lot of musicians, the big ways they make their money to actually live is usually performances, merchandise, maybe some sync licensing. But to be honest, for most of them, it's really performances, right? And that's what this question, I think, kind of highlights this awesome aspect. And I stress the word awesome because I know a lot of musicians are scared about AI music. I've already talked about not only the technical aspects of creating music in terms of AI music, whether you're using Suno or Udio or another platform. There's a lot of AI music generators out there. So I've done videos about the technical aspects, but also I've talked about the philosophical aspects of AI music. And one thing that I've touched upon, which I feel like this question kind of words it perfectly, is what about performances? Now there have been, because people have commented this, which is kind of cool, I did not know this. There have been a couple bands that were actually all robots or all AI. And I didn't know that existed. I know at some point it's probably going to. But I think what's interesting about that is, to me, that's a gimmick, right? If someone said to me, hey, here in LA, there's this AI-only band. It's only robots. It's only AI. Do you want to go? I'd be like, you know what? Just out of curiosity, why not? It'd be an interesting YouTube video as well to do, right? Maybe for my vlog channel or something. But I'd probably go and see it out of curiosity. But after that one show, I'd rather see a human perform. I'd rather see a singer. I'd rather see a DJ mixing live, right? I'd rather see, a phenomenal jazz musician playing live, so on and so forth. I have zero interest in ever seeing anything AI. Now, who knows? Who knows? Maybe in a century from now, things could be different, right? And this is where it could get kind of Black Mirror-ish, because I guarantee if you said to someone 50 or 60 or 70 or 80 years ago, hey, in the future, did you know that people are going to stand behind some type of electronic synthesis or some type of electronic computer and they just touch buttons and people want to see it? I guarantee if you ask someone 80 years ago, would you want to see that? Most people would be like, why would I want to see someone press a bunch of electronic computerized buttons when I could see a live instrument or a live singer? Now, though, DJing is obviously DJing. I'm a DJ, right? I make electronic music. And I think, who was it, George? I can't remember who said. There was actually a quote, I think it was from the 70s or 60s, where someone basically predicted and nailed it about what music will be in the future. And they basically, who was it? I honestly, I can't remember who it was. Yeah, maybe I can find it, maybe like repost it and do a video about it because it was, they basically nailed it, and it was like 50 years ahead of its time, and they nailed what DJing was years ago before it was still not even in its infancy. It didn't even exist, right? But anyway, I'm going a bit down the rabbit hole, but it's very relevant because who knows, maybe in a century from now, people might say, you know what? Why see a person playing a saxophone or a trumpet when they could mess up? Like, there's a lot of potential flaws with it. When I can see an AI perform the trumpet, like a robot playing the trumpet, and they're perfect at it. Like, so who knows, right? But I think this does bring up a good aspect that right now, at least, if, like, say, someone was releasing music, like, say, they create an artist, Joe Schmo, I use that example a lot. They use an AI music generator. They release, like, say, 3 albums. I'm making this up. The artist blows up, and people are like, whoa, this Joe Schmo person, or let me not say person, this Joe Schmo entity, I gotta see him live. It does bring up this question of, if, like, say, you're releasing electronic music via an AI music generator, do you now just start DJing shows and all the music that you're DJing isn't really yours, but technically it is because you generated it, right? Like, I mean, kind of tough to say. But let's say if it's a jazz situation where, like, say, all you do is release AI music generated jazz records, would people want to see a DJ for that? No, they probably want to see a live jazz musician. And it brings up this conundrum that, well, what do? You can't really perform it. You're not going to really DJ because people who want to see a jazz musician are very different than people who want to see a DJ. Those are 2 different type of musical performances. You kind of can't really do anything. And I think this is where it does bring up, at least for the very foreseeable future, I think this whole aspect that although a lot of musicians are scared about AI music, and I do think there is a lot of legitimacy to that. For example, if, like, say, there's a, I don't know, to use a very, like, LA example, like, say someone's making an independent film, it's a student film, budgets are very tight, of course, and they're like, shoot, we need someone, or we need, in general, like, a score for this one particular independent film, and we need, like, a dark, like, say, ambient type song. They very easily, and probably will now, go to Suno or Udio, create it in seconds, not have to pay anybody. They may have to pay, like, I think I got the, the Suno membership because I was doing an experiment, which I'll talk about a bit later this year. It was like $10 a month for, like, I think it was like 1,500 credits. It equaled, like, I don't know, like 300 songs. It was something ridiculous, or maybe 400 or 500. I can't remember what it was. But basically, for $10 for 1 month as a subscription service to make it in 2 seconds, it is insane, right? And I think that is something to be scared of. I do think there's some legitimacy to that, right? I mean, even for me, there's been some times, you know, I just did a video about this where I downloaded a splice sample, and I'm like, oh, this could make a good song. But then I put it into Suno, and I did a video about this, and instantly makes a song with that exact sample, and it warped it and twisted it and chopped it up and did unique things to it, and I'm like, oh, this actually nailed it, right? So I think the whole aspect of production and creating music, I think, is a valid thing to be a little bit worried about. I do think there is some legitimacy to that. And I will be doing a video about this maybe later this week or next week about this whole aspect of the AI content singularity. It's kind of dark and very twisted, but also something that could very easily happen. Which, again, I'll stay tuned for that maybe next week. It's going to be a bit of like a depressing video. But switching things now on not a pessimistic, but an optimistic way, or in a good way. And again, I'm just speaking off the top of my head when it comes to this. I think one optimistic viewpoint, though, one positive one to look at, with all the musicians scared about AI, is really the performance aspect. And again, I think that question brings up that aspect and really nails the whole, almost rhetorically asking, like, well, what do you do? And the truth is, I don't really think much. Now, until maybe in 100 years from now, or maybe, like, you could have your own robot and say, oh, see this robot, but also, right, just to give an example, let's say I love Joe Schmo, the jazz musician, and then I find out, oh, it's actually a robot, and it's a robot that plays jazz. Like I said, at first, it's a kind of a gimmick. You're like, oh, I'd pay to see a robot play jazz out of curiosity more than anything. But then when I want to do that again, probably not. I'd rather just see a human perform. Let me know what you think in the comments, though. Again, maybe this could be one of those things that, like, in 50 years from now, similar to DJing, like I said before, which is very relevant, I feel like, to an extent, people might be like, dude, why would I see a human when I could see a robot who's way better? A lot of people right now are scared of self-driving cars. I actually took one recently called Waymo, And there's been studies to show that a Waymo, for example, is, I think, 2 to 3 times safer than a human driver. I would not be surprised in 60 years from now if people say, dude, who drives anymore? Why drive when it's super dangerous? You might get in an accident. You can't trust humans. What if you didn't sleep that well last night? Why do that when I can have a robot drive and it's perfect? Could people say that about music? I think obviously getting in a car and you being safe is very different. But I think one kind of unique thing, and I said this before in other videos about musicians in general, or humans performing, is the aspect that someone might mess up. Not saying that you want them to, and I think that's very clear. It's not that you want people to mess up, but I think the fact that you know that they could makes it more raw and more relatable, more empathetic. It's more impressive. I think, like, if I see a robot perform and it plays perfectly on the trumpet, I'm not that impressed. I might enjoy the music, but I might not be as impressed because I'm just like, what's a robot? And like, yeah, like, okay. It's almost like if you type in something on a calculator and you type in an equation and it gives you a perfect result, you might be like, all right, well, yeah, I mean, yeah. But if a human does it in their head, and we've probably all seen videos like on America's Got Talent or viral videos where someone can do all these calculations in their head, it's more impressive. Why? Because they could mess up. And there's something raw about that there's probably an insane backstory, or they just have God-given talent or whatever that allows them to do that. And it's way more impressive. And I think that's what is a big thing that I don't think AI music, and if you look at an AI artist, can really kind of touch upon. And that's a big thing to talk about, the positive aspects of, like, say, a human performing that I don't think AI could ever really compete with, right? Now, granted, again, who knows? You never know in the future if this is this could be like an old, ancient perspective. You never know, right? But I do think it is one of those things when it comes to a lot of musicians, talking about this, that what do you do? And the truth is, I don't know. I think that's a big thing when it comes to this video, and I know I'm touching upon a lot of different points here. Again, very long, unedited, raw video. Just kind of giving my thoughts about this, because it is a very intriguing question, because I almost think this is inevitable, right? Kind of making things full circle, jumping back directly to the main specific question of what do you do? One, I think it's inevitable, like I said earlier, right in the beginning. And because it's inevitable, when that does happen, what do you do? I think it brings up these questions that, one, it does depend upon the genre. Like I said, I think if you're making EDM, you just mix it as a DJ, but then you yourself will have to learn how to DJ and all this kind of stuff. But if it's any other genre, I feel like that involves some type of live instrumentation aspect, whether it's a jazz musician, a rock musician, a singer, let's say it's opera, for example, let's say it's classical, so just, let's say, piano, right? There's really not a lot you can do. And until, let's say, maybe robots come out, like similar to, all these movies that we've probably seen, I don't think there's a lot that can happen, which I think still shows, at least right now, that for the foreseeable future, there is almost a cap or a limit of how much AI music can really affect you. And I think the big thing right now is it can, and I think is already, affecting people making music, creating music, whether it's you releasing it on Spotify, like say it's like I said, it's an independent film that needs a score, whether it's whatever. It's very easy to do that. But when it comes to the performance aspect, I still think we are light years away from AI truly kind of taking over that realm, because there is something human and raw that we all love to see, which is a big reason why a lot of people go to see performances, right? And because a lot of musicians make most of their money performing, that is something that I don't think I'd worry about just yet. So there is a huge limit on where AI music can really go when you're touching on performances. I do think there is some point where maybe the question will come up about AI music or AI versus humans in terms of performing, but I feel like we're still very far away from that.